The Reinterment of the Dead? The transition from winter to spring on Thal'zar is always a moment of renewal, yet this day bore a burden that weighed heavier than the melting snow. It was the day the spirits of the past were finally brought home. The arrival of the giants. When the breath of the Tirathi appeared in the sky above the academy, its shadow felt like a gentle greeting to the old homeland. The ship, a masterpiece of engineering, touched down alongside the Heimat with such lightness that it almost seemed as if the two giants were whispering to one another. The terrace, once the place where Edgar and Electra had watched the sunsets of Sacaris, was today merely a stage of anticipation. As the ramp lowered and the group, led by E&E, followed by Ayla, Cheyenne, Batomi, and the three sisters, stepped onto the ground, the silence at the academy was almost palpable. It was not an empty silence, but one filled with reverence. The walk to the burial ground. Mira and Alara welcomed the returnees with their customary warmth, yet their expressions were solemn, befitting the occasion. Together, the group walked toward the burial ground. Upon arriving, they all stood silently before the clan's graves for several minutes. Maia-Despina. Edgar's movements were heavy, weighted by age and memories, as he opened the grave slab. The retrieval of the urn and that small tin box, which Ayla had placed there years ago, was a moment of pure, unconditional love. He held them tightly against his heart for a moment, an everlasting love reaching far beyond death, before entrusting them to Ayla. When the memorial stone was replaced by its replica and the grave leveled for eternity, it was as if a part of his soul had finally found peace. With tears in his eyes, he rose once more. He swayed slightly. Electra and Cheyenne steadied him. Iltani's stone, too, had been gently removed. The replica gleamed in the pale light of Sacaris, while the original was now ready for the journey to Thal'zar. Batomi's flowers, placed at the new site, served as a silent promise that no one here would ever be forgotten. The weight of memory. The path led onward to the memorials marking the clan's darkest hours. Cosima, Edgar paused before her stone. The flowers he laid down were a symbol of a bond that endured even beyond death. The 156 victims. This final pilgrimage was the hardest of all. The sea of candles, lit by Ayla, Cheyenne, Batomi, Mira, and Alara, flickered defiantly against the academy winds. It was a sea of light for the souls who had laid the very foundation of the clan as it stands today. A sacrifice Edgar never once took for granted. Farewell to the academy. On the way back to the ship, Terran and Lirea were waiting. Their words echoed in the cool air, giving voice to what everyone was feeling. Well, Electra, Edgar, Ayla, Cheyenne, it is such a pity that you are leaving. We will miss you dearly here at the academy. Yet we see that you do not leave merely to vanish, but rather to carry the dead to the place where the heart of the clan now beats. Edgar cast one last look around. The academy had been a place of learning, of ascent, and of mourning. But the breath of the Tirathi was already waiting. The urns and stones were safely stowed deep within the ship's hold. We aren't really leaving, Electra replied softly, placing her hand on Lirea's shoulder. We are merely expanding the circle. And we are taking our loved ones with us into the warmth of the new spring. With one final glance at the Sacaris plateau, they boarded once more. The asterisk Tirathi's engines hummed deeply, ready to bridge the gap between the past at the academy and the future on Thal'zar and Tirathos. The ship ascended in an elegant arc, the engines of the breath of the Tirathi emitting nothing more than a deep, soothing hum. Down on the terrace, the figures of Terran, Lirea, Mira, and Alara grew ever smaller, until they were mere specks in the vast, dusty landscape of Sacaris. A final salute from the skies. In a gesture of respect, Elysa dipped the ship's wings ever so slightly once more, a silent salute to the stones that now remained below as replicas, and to the souls who had shaped the clan into what it was today. Then, she gently nudged the thrust levers forward. The ascent. Gravity briefly pressed the group back into their seats as the blue of the sky transitioned into the deep black of space. On board, inside the ship, a reverent silence prevailed. Edgar sat in one of the armchairs in the common area, his gaze fixed upon the secure container where Maya's urn and Iltani's memorial stone were stowed. He looked exhausted. Yet a heavy burden seemed to have lifted from his shoulders. The connection. Electra sat down beside him in silence and placed her hand over his. They needed no words. The mission was complete. The past was safely on board. Course set for Thal'zar. The three sisters on the bridge worked like a well-oiled team. Thalia monitored the life support systems. Lirea held a steady course. And Elysa prepared for the jump. Ready for the homeward flight, Elysa announced softly over the intercom, with a brief flare of its navigation lights. The massive vessel vanished from Sacaris' orbit. Behind them, the Academy remained, a place filled with echoes, while ahead, the bright glow of Thal'zar awaited. The world now ready to welcome both its dead and its living into the embrace of spring. The breath of the Tarathi glided through the void like a shimmering wraith, a ship transporting not merely supplies and technology, but the clan's most precious treasure, its memories and its love. The air on the Thal'zar plateau was crisp, carrying the scent of thawing snow and the first harbingers of spring. As the breath of the Tarathi extended its landing struts and settled gently onto the ground, the silence of the gathered community was almost palpable. Nova, Kales, Serena, River, Vega, and Hespera, they all stood like an unyielding wall of compassion and respect, bearing witness to this historic moment. The homecoming of souls. The act of interment unfolded with solemn deliberation. There was no longer any haste, no fleeing from the passage of time. Maia-Despina. Edgar moved with the precision of a man guarding a sanctuary. As he lowered the heavy marble casket, and Ayla placed inside it the urn and the dented tin box, the last physical link to her mother, the world seemed to hold its breath for a single heartbeat. The photograph and the letter, symbols of a painful yet infinitely cherished farewell, now rested exactly where they belonged, deep within the heart of the clan's territory. Iltani. With Batomi's assistance, Iltani's memorial stone, too, found its place. The stones now stood side by side, encircled by a sea of flowers, a vibrant tapestry of the colors of life, gathered there by the daughters. A moment of pure humanity. Ayla's grief, finding release in her whispered words and bitter tears, shattered the silence of the ceremony. As she clung weeping to Edgar, it became clear that this moment was not merely a formality, but a profound act of catharsis. I loved you, mother, and father, too. These words, spoken upon the soil of Thal'zar, served as a final vow that their memory would never fade. Edgar held her with that silent strength which was his hallmark. He needed no words, for his own pain and his love flowed into Ayla through this wordless embrace. Cheyenne and Electra formed the outer ring of this embrace, a tableau of absolute unity. The echoes of the night. When, at last, the echoes of the sunset drifted across the horizon of Thal'zar, bathing the sky in deep hues of crimson and violet, they all looked up together. It was as if the departed were offering a final salutation to the planet before settling into their rest. The full circle. For the first time, the clan's inner circle, both the living and the dead, was gathered in a single place. The fragmentation of the past had been healed. The silence after the storm. As the last rays of light faded, night settled over the plateau. The torches and candles continued to burn steadily, illuminating the path back to Tidalon. The chapter of grief was not yet closed, but it had found a place where it could exist with dignity. The dead were buried, their souls were anchored. For the three sisters, Elysa, Lirea, and Thalia, who had silently borne witness to this process, this was the most vital lesson. A clan leaves no one behind, neither in life nor in death. The new beginning on Tirathos could now commence. For the foundation on Thal'zar was, at long last, complete. The return from the plateau to the familiar halls of Tidalon felt like sinking into a warm bath after a trek through icy waters. The gathering around the fire was quieter this time than usual. The heaviness of their parting still hung in the blankets they had drawn around their shoulders. A bond that defies time. When Edgar took Electra's hand and spoke those simple yet profound words, "It is finished," it was not merely an expression of gratitude to the children. It was a public affirmation of a love that had endured through every storm, every war, and every galaxy. Electra and Edgar formed the unshakable center around which all the others revolved. Like planets orbiting a binary star, the wisdom of the creature. Astraea, whose instincts reached far beyond the scope of human understanding, sensed the trembling in the air. She was no mere animal. She was the emotional seismograph of the pack. Then, in the silence of the stable, something occurred that words alone could never achieve. The gesture. When Astraea rested her massive head against Edgar's chest, it was her way of saying, "I bear this burden with you." Ayla's release, within the thick, warm fur of the great creature. Ayla found a sanctuary where she could weep out her pain without restraint. Astraea stood firm as a rock against the tide, unmoving and patient, until the fiercest storm of tears had passed. A glimpse into eternity. When Ayla finally pulled away and gazed into the creature's deep, dark eyes, a moment occurred that she would never forget. Was it a hallucination? Or was it what was known as the soul bridge? In the moist, reflective depths of Astraea's eyes, the light of the echoes of Thal'zar seemed to shimmer and resonate. Perhaps she glimpsed in it a brief flash of Maia's smile, or the steadfast gaze of her father. It was as if Astraea served as a guardian between worlds, showing Ayla, for the mere blink of an eye, that nothing and no one is ever truly lost, so long as love nourishes the memory. The peace of the night. Outside, the spring wind rattled against the rocks. Yet within the stable, and by the fire, a different quality of stillness now prevailed. The pain had not vanished, but it was now cradled within the embrace of the clan and of nature. Edgar wrapped his arm around Ayla and guided her back toward the fire. The three sisters of Viridia observed the scene with profound respect. They understood now that they were not merely heirs to a technological planet, but heirs to an infinite humanity. "Sleep now," Electra said softly, as she distributed the last drops of tea. "Tomorrow marks the first day when we need no longer look back to find our loved ones. They are here now, with us."